With a pickle mind, we kick the nipple beer. Steady as a goat, we're flying over trout. Ghetto down the highway at the speed of light. All I wanna feel now is the wind in my eyes. Sack of monkeys in my pocket. My sister's ready to go. Hear the engines roll now. Idiot control now. Hideous control now. Nitty on the road now. Mini in control. Wheels on fire. Burning rubber tires.
Hello and welcome to the MSTieCast. I'm your host, Toby Mobius, here with my two cohorts, Joshua M.
Hi there.
And returning original co-host, Frederick Fritz. How you doing, Fred?
Good, thank you. Thanks for having me back.
Good to have you back. And tonight on the MSTieCast is our very first industry guest, someone who had a film on the show, Mystery Science Theater, Mr. David Worth, whose film Warrior of the Lost World was episode 501 of Mystery Science Theater. Welcome, Mr. Worth.
Thank you for having me. Nice to hear from all you guys.
It's a pleasure having you. It's a distinguished pleasure.
Thank you so much.
It's an honor.
Now, because Frederick is our resident aspiring filmmaker, I am the actor, and Josh is the trivia hound, as it were. Yep. I feel that it is best if Fred begin the talks. So take it away, Fred.
All right, well, thank you. Well, sir, one of the things I noticed looking over your career, so before we begin, I just thought it'd be nice to bring up, you've had a very diverse career over the years. And I think sometimes the general public doesn't understand just how hard it is to make it in this business. They only hear the larger success stories, and they hear about how these people have complete control over everything they do and that. And they don't realize what it actually takes to make it in this business. I was wondering if you'd be willing to tell us a little bit about your start in the business and why you've worn so many hats, as well as been involved with so many different styles of films over the years.
Very good question. My heroes when I was starting out were guys like D.W. Griffith and John Ford. D.W. Griffith invented the language of film in the early 1900s while he was working at Biograph, making not 100, not 200, not 300, not 400, but over 450 one- and two-reel films, learning about film, pushing film, figuring out what the language of film was, and basically setting all of the templates for the way we make films today. And John Ford, on the other hand, made like 60 10-day westerns before he ever made his first feature film, The Iron Horse, in 1929. So my philosophy was anything that came across my desk, I would do. I wasn't picky about anything because I knew I would never get my chops the way that those guys got their chops, and they got it by doing and doing and doing. I started out, what really started me on the path of becoming a filmmaker was one afternoon when I was in high school watching Citizen Kane on television. And even with all of the commercials, I got it. And it knocked my socks off, and it started me walking down that long highway that I still seem to be on. I ended up doing some acting. I ended up coming out to Los Angeles and going to junior college and then UCLA and studying film. And when I was at the point of going into my senior year at UCLA, I asked about any apprenticeship programs or internship programs as a stepping stone into the industry, and they didn't exist at the time. They said, no, we don't have any. So basically, I left school because I was already working in the film industry, doing little things here and there, and got into the streets, picked up a camera, and started hustling, little commercials, little title sequences, on and on and on, and doing a lot of little forgettable films over the next few years before finally, becoming a quote-unquote professional filmmaker.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I see that obviously certain titles stand out more in anybody's filmography. And for me, the ones that popped immediately was the fact that you worked with Clint Eastwood and Buddy Van Horn very early on. What was it like to work with these two giants in the industry?
Well, that was an amazing experience. It was the best, one of the absolutely best years of my life. I was with Clint exactly for 1 year, and we did Bronco Billy and Any Which Way You Can, basically back to back. Mm-hmm. I had been a fan of Clint's. I'd gone to all of the spaghetti westerns, and seen them again and again. I never thought I would ever even meet the man. But our industry works in strange ways. It's not a cut and dried, take a job in the bank and then work your way up, or take your job in the mailroom and work your way up. It has to do with chemistry and being at the right place at the right time. And that was really the way that I got to Clint. It was kind of just being at the right place at the right time.
Did you pick up any? Did you learn from them and techniques that you would later use yourself and utilize in your own productions?
Yes, and vice versa. The reason I got to Clint was I came in and photographed a film called Death Game that starred Sandra Locke and Seymour Cassell and Colleen Camp. It was a little film, kind of a little horror movie that we shot in Los Angeles. I exposed like 150,000 feet of Panavision anamorphic film in 13 days. And I ended up editing the film also, and Sandra Locke, who had already been nominated for an Academy Award for her first movie, Hard as a Lonely Hunter, went from that film to a movie called The Outlaw Josie Wales, and began along a affair that lasted longer than most marriages in Hollywood with Mr. Eastwood. And she thought, even though Hard as a Lonely Hunter was photographed by the maestro James Wong Howe, one of the top cinematographers in the world, she thought that how I'd photographed her on this little 13-day horror film was the best she'd ever been photographed. And she started nudging Clint about me, and eventually that's how I got Bronco Billy in Any Which Way You Can.
That's awesome.
That's how the industry works.
Yeah, I could.
So, now, as far as learning from them and vice versa, while I was editing Death Game, I had seen Mr. Kubrick's film. Mr. Kubrick was, like a god. There's like Stanley Kubrick and D.W. Griffith and Orson Welles. Then there's everybody else. And I had seen his film Clockwork Orange several times and really just adored it. And while I was editing Death Game, I was at the point where in the old days you had to put every actor's dialogue on a separate 1,000-foot reel of 35 millimeter soundtrack, so it could be equalized in the sound mix. And I needed more fill leader between the actors speaking. You just put old 35 millimeter prints. So I called MGM and asked for more fill leader, and they sent me a box of fill leader, and it happened to be Clockwork Orange with French subtitles. So now I have a print of Clockwork Orange in my possession, because this is back in the days before there were no VHSs, there were no DVDs. You could only study a film by screening it, and the projectionist would not go back and run your favorite scenes. So now I take my work off the moviola, and I put Mr. Kubrick's work on it, and I begin running it forward and back, forward and back, forward and back. And I come to the scene where little Alex kills the cat lady with the giant phallus, and all of a sudden I freeze the film in the moviola and go, "Are you kidding me? You've got to be kidding me. What the blank is this?" And I ran it again and again, and I could see very plainly that Mr. Kubrick was shooting them with an 18 millimeter lens, with a handheld Aeroflex camera going 360 degrees around this room, and I could see all four walls, the floor and the ceiling, and there were no movie lights.
Oh, man.
This was a revelation. This was an epiphany for me. And I realized that Mr. Kubrick had brought some light sculptures in with 150-watt bulbs in them, put them around the room and said, I'm lit, and shot his movie. I studied that film. I went and studied all the other scenes. I studied a lot of his other films and just discovered that he had been doing this since the circular set, the circular table in Dr. Strangelove, in the circular revolving spaceship in 2001, with the candle sequence in Barry Lyndon, on and on and on. So I immediately changed my whole thought about lighting to that. And that's what I brought to Bronco Billy.
Wow, I've heard that these films had a very fast turnover time for shoot, so that would probably be due to the setup time, right? The lowering of the setup time for lighting.
What I brought to Bronco Billy was totally lighting that film with practical lights. I put practical lights in every room, in every bar. In the circus tent, I put practical theatrical lights above the tent. It had 2 follow spots in the back, and was doing 30 and 40 and 50 setups a day with 3 cameras. So our schedule was originally 8 weeks, and Clint is very fast and efficient on his own. He always comes in several days under schedule. With me on this film, with that style of lighting, we came in 2.5 weeks under schedule on a major studio film with Clint Eastwood.
That's practically obscene.
so that's why I got to do two movies back to back. He kind of put his arm around me and said, "Why don't you hang around for a month? We're going to start another film up soon." So that's what I brought to Clint, and what I learned from Clint and Buddy was they worked faster than I did, and I was a guy working out of the back of an Econoline van. 75% of the time, Clint would print the rehearsal or the first take. He'd say, "Shoot the rehearsal," quietly, and we'd shoot it. He'd say, "Got that?" I'd say, "Got it, yeah, moving on." And what that did was foster a kind of energy in both the cast and the crew to get it right for the big guy right away. They knew they weren't going to get a lot of takes, and everyone was just constantly on their toes and doing an outstanding job. So I learned that Mr. Eastwood is basically a big independent filmmaker.
Well, to move this along a little bit, you've got so many films I would love to just personally spend time and ask you questions about. But I guess we'll go for some, just for the sake of this, to move it along and be a little more obvious. I'd like to contrast that. What was it then to work with on the Jean-Claude Van Damme films, and the contrast of going into those versus these earlier works that you did? Because a lot of people might not know you were the director of photography on Bloodsport, which then, I believe, led into being the director of Kickboxer. Absolutely
right. I had Jean-Claude in his first 2 major films. And, basically, there's not much difference in my working style from what I did in Bronco Billy to what I did in Bloodsport. I brought exactly the same energy and exactly the same Kubrickian lighting. I built all of my lights into the Kumite this time, so that I would never have to change a light. I would never have to say, well, if we're going to look that way, I need 2 hours to turn all the lights around. That's not a Kubrickian way of working. The Kubrickian way of working is to build the lights into the sets so the actors never have to worry about, am I on my mark? The whole set is their mark. As a result, on Bloodsport, we were averaging, during the week we shot the Kumite, 70 setups a day. And once I had a high of 93. It was just an amazing experience. They were outside rehearsing fights. We were inside shooting fights, and as one of my pals, Roddy Piper, used to say, I'm here to do 2 things, kick ass and chew bubble gum, and I'm all out of bubble gum.
So is it this efficiency which led to you being asked to be the director of Kickboxer?
Basically, yes.
Okay. I assume, because I've never seen or read any issues that, there was sort of an infamy about Van Damme taking over the editing of Cyborg. I'm going to assume that nothing like that had happened on Kickboxer, as I've never heard anything of that nature.
Well, there were a lot of people with their hands in Kickboxer. I did my director's cut within the first 3 or 4 weeks, and then I left the producer to finish the film because that's basically what had happened on Bloodsport.
Okay.
Newt Arnold had done his director's cut and then left the finishing of the film to the producer, and that's what we did on Kickboxer.
Oh, okay. I see just around the same time a little time after you did Bloodsport, you did this very little film that I've actually always loved called China Cry. How did you get involved with that one?
I got involved with that because I had worked in Hong Kong.
Okay.
They were looking for a director of photography that had worked in Hong Kong. And I had done Bloodsport and Kickboxer, and so they knew that I knew the dance. And it takes a certain kind of a dance out there because you have to be very very gentle when you're dealing with Asians, because otherwise, if you discourage them, if you say something objectionable or derogatory about their work, they lose face. You then, if that happens, you lose them as a participant in the film, basically. Okay. So I had been through the dance, I knew it, and I went in and met the guys, and I was thrilled to be able to go back to Hong Kong, and I had a absolutely great time doing that film. One of the top directors I've ever worked with, Jim Collier, he'd come out of working with because he'd been a theatrical director and taught Stanislavski method and all those things. So it was like for me to watch him work with the actors was like an acting workshop. It was wonderful.
Oh, sweet. Well, thank you. It was just a little personal. I thought I'd throw just a little bit of a different title in there. I've always thought it was beautifully lit, and I was very when I was reading your biography and I saw that was a film that you had done. I just had to bring it up. I've always thought it was a beautiful looking movie.
Well, that's the other reason I jumped on it. It was more of a drama, and that's the reason I jumped. There's another film that I did called I Might Even Love You, because nobody ever asked me to do romance or anything like that. And so I jumped at being able to do something that was different than either beating someone to death or chasing an 18-wheeler down the highway.
Well, that's the one thing about your career that really stands out to me is just, again, the diversity, the amount of work. I mean, we're here to talk about Warriors of the Lost World, but
right.
And you also have another sort of infamous title, Shark Attack 3, that's become, it has scenes that are very popular internet memes.
Yes, all because of the wonderful, wonderful John Barrowman, who kept us in stitches the entire film. I adore this man, and I'd give anything if I could get John Barrowman in another film. He's just a great guy to work with, and this is before he had his success with Doctor Who and the spin-off
Torchwood.
Torchwood, but he's just a delight, and we had a wonderful time. And the way the infamous scene came about is we did the shot, and I was wrapping for the day, and he came to me and said, "Please do one more because I want to say something to make Jenny laugh." And I said, or to shock Jenny. I said, "Sure, back to one, put the crane back in, back to one. Let's go back to one more." And when he did it, I didn't know what he was going to do. When he did it, I fell out of my director's chair screaming with laughter. I left all the way back to the hotel. Every time I played the scene, because he did it so straight, he did it just like a real actor reading a real line, which is what he is. He didn't put any irony in or anything. Every time I watched that scene, I just broke up laughing. So I put it in the film just for me. And I said, I'm leaving this in until somebody tells me to take it out. And the producers never told me to take it out. And so there it is.
Well,
somebody must have coughed when they were screening it and missed it, because fine with me.
Well, I don't think we could find a better lead-in to Warriors of the Lost World. So with that, and we'll come back at the end there to ask a couple more questions about your career. But gentlemen, would you like to take over the Warriors of the Lost World portion?
I'll ask. So, after you had done the 2 Clint Eastwood films, you were, if I'm remembering correctly, looking for work?
I was looking for work, yeah, because I really thought after doing 2 Clint Eastwood films in Hollywood, someone would knock on my door, and nobody knocked. So I was looking for work. I was looking all over the place, trying to work here, trying to work there, trying to get this project going, that project going, writing treatments, and I pitched a treatment to a friend of mine, Sandy Howard, the producer who did
Man Called Horse.
Man Cold Horse films. And I pitched it to him, I said, this is basically, I said, it's Clint Eastwood on a motorcycle. He rides out of the heat waves on the highway, comes into town and solves all the problems, and rides out into the heat waves again. It's a high plains drifter on a motorcycle. And he said, I have this producer friend, call and pitch this to Ed Sarlouis. So I called Ed Sarlouis, and I pitched him this, and he said, put it in the future. I said, fine, it's in the future. He said, how would you like to direct this film in Rome? I said, when would you like me to leave? He said, can you come by the office tomorrow and get a check? I went by this was on a Wednesday. I went by the office on a Thursday, got a check, signed a writer-director's contract, got on a plane on Friday. I was in Rome on Saturday scouting locations for Warrior of the Lost World. Now, if someone can find me a production that ever went together quicker than that, I'll buy him dinner.
When you first pitched it to Sandy Howard, like what were you thinking? Did you just think that you'd direct it? Did you think that you'd write it?
No, I had a treatment. I had a little treatment that I was working on. I thought it was pretty cool. High plains drifter on a motorcycle. I thought it was, I was just trying to get anything going. I was, staring at like months of unemployment, and the rent was due, et cetera, et cetera. And so when I pitched it to his friend Ed Sarlouis, here's what happened. Ed Sarlouis had already sold a similar poster at a few film festivals, and had buyers waiting, and had taken money from buyers on a film that all he had was a poster on. This is the good old swinging days, folks, back in the 1980s. So I hit him again, just like Sandra Locke in Death Game. I was at the right place at the right time with the right pitch, and I was sent off to Rome to make the movie Warrior of the Lost World. And one of the best years of my life. Are you kidding me? Being in Rome, having the food, being surrounded by the architecture, writing and directing a film. It was the best. Plus my then girlfriend, who I was corresponding with in Singapore, was going through Europe, having a vacation, and came and spent some time with me. We fell in love in Rome, and we've been married 27 years this year, I believe.
That's lovely.
So it was a great year and a great experience. Who knows? Who knew that I was making a Mystery Science Theater 3000 classic?
At what point were you shown that poster? That infamous poster.
Well, I was shown the poster when I arrived, and I forget what it was, but it wasn't my film, but it was close. It was close enough for government work, as we like to say. And they I had I think I came up with the title Warrior of the Lost World pretty quickly, and I was I would spend my time in my room right off the Piazza del Popolo at the Residenza di Ripetta in the Via Ripetta, in my room, typing away on the treatment every day, and then in the afternoon someone would come and get me, and we'd go scout for locations, and then I'd see locations, and I'd use what they showed me that we could use that was in the distance that they wanted to drive, and I wrote those into the script.
So
what I ended up with was a 40-page treatment, and Mr. Sarlouis came into town, and I said, would you like me to read you the treatment? He said yes. So he didn't. His English was a little halting, but he understood. And I read the entire treatment to him, page by page. And it was basically all there, the beginning, middle, and the end. It was the action of the film from beginning to end. And at the end of my reading that to him, he said, okay, make the movie. I said, wait a minute, don't you want me to turn this 40-page script into like a 95-page script? He said, no, make the movie. So I turned the 40-page script into 250 pages of storyboards and made the movie. If it's a little light on dialogue and motivation and subplot and backstory, sorry.
Oh, man. It's funny, the thing about the poster, just a side note, reminds me of how Full Moon, well, Empire Pictures back then, and Full Moon pre-sell all their movies. I wonder if they got the idea from this.
Yeah, well, that's yes. In fact, Ed Sarlouis was the mentor to the guy who runs Full Moon.
Oh, Charlie Band? He was the mentor to Charlie? Oh.
He was a friend and mentor to Charlie Band.
Oh, that explains a lot.
That explains a lot. That's how they were doing him back in the day, pre-selling the poster and then making the movie. Yeah. And I happened to be at the right place at the right time. Look, what I was trying to do, as I explained on the DVD, I knew that this was going to be a low budget, action flick, and I was using it to do a tribute to the serials that I grew up watching, and to do it just about as cheaply. Where those serials were great because they would have a page of dialogue or two, if you were lucky, that would set up the next 10 minutes of action, and that's basically what I tried to do with that film. Now, there have been a lot of other guys that made tributes to serials, spending $60 and $70 million. God bless them. I spent $750,000 or $450,000, whatever they had back in those days, doing my tribute to the serials.
And in a way, that little movie was better than a lot of those big budgies.
Well, I'm not saying that it's better. It certainly was, for me, it was truer to the spirit of those small little poverty row serials that were made back in the 30s and 40s that they would use to bring kids into the theaters every week.
There does seem to be a lot of little cliffhanger moments throughout the movie where you feel like you could just cut right there and tune in next week when they get in the helicopter and the father's left behind, and
that's right.
That would be like a moment where you'd cut in a serial, and
that's right.
Okay. When did the computer, by the way, when did you add the talking motorcycle into all this?
Einstein.
Yeah, it was in the treatment. It was in the treatment. So
it wasn't something you added on the spot.
No. It was in the treatment. That was part of because it was future. It was in the future. And so I figured he talked to his motorcycle, and he had a little computer on it that would do anything that he wanted it to do, but it had a mind of its own, kind of. And my little tongue-in-cheek something there to give me a smile.
If you would, talk about the cast a little bit.
We got lucky because these people all rolled the dice on basically the reason why Robert Ginty and Persis Khamphata and Donald Pleasance all made that film was because Ed Sarlouis gave them a month in Rome, or a week or 2 weeks, however. I think Ginty was there for a month. Persis was there for 3 weeks. Donald Pleasance may have only been there for a week. I can't recall. But that was the reason why they did it. It was in Rome, and they were making a movie in Rome. Ginty said he just rolled the dice because there was no script, and he had a great time doing it. And so, I was very thrilled when I got that cast. I thought that was especially Donald Pleasance. I mean, my God, to be able to work with someone of that caliber who'd worked with Roman Polanski, who'd been in the Great Escape, on and on. I mean, I was thrilled, and Persis was great, and the paper chase guy was pretty good too.
Was there plans to was there any thoughts to be a sequel, and were any of these people already contracted for a potential sequel?
No, They were not
Okay.
contracted for a sequel. If the film would have performed, we would have done one. I did a treatment. I already did a treatment when I finished it for a sequel. That's the reason why I left it. That's why he rides off into the heat waves, and then and means he can come back. But the other guy who was in it was in MASH, of course, Fred the Hammer Williamson. And the way Fred got in it is he knew I was in Rome directing a film, and I met him at a party, and he came up to me and said, "Please put me in your film." I said, "Why?" He said, "Because I just finished doing another little film here, and the women love me here in Rome. Please put me in your film so I can stay a little longer." I said, Fred, you're now the co-star of my film." That's how shit gets done.
I was just gonna say this ties right back to what you said about Sandra Locke at the beginning.
I'm telling you, that's how this industry works. And if you're on the inside, which I've never been, if you're the ICM crowd, if you're on the inside of people who get all the good scripts, and you're one of those people and go to those parties, then you all shake hands with each other and are in each other's films. And yes, and that all happens, and you have a wonderful A-list career. I have a Z-list career because I wasn't in that circle, but I read my light meter and call action and cut just like those guys.
And in fairness, those other guys aren't on the MSTieCast, so.
That's right. And they don't have people looking at their film going, "Do you have any fruit to declare?" Which is my favorite fucking scene in the film.
It probably is like the best riff in the entire thing.
Just wonderful, guys. You guys, I double over laughing every time I watch what MST3K does to it. It's just brilliant how you beautifully skewer us, and we deserve every bit of it.
They put so much into just the opening of that movie, more so than I think they do several. I don't mean the credits either. I mean they put just as the warriors coming up out of the
heat waves.
Right.
Heat waves. Thank you. They're saying, "Yeah, it's RC Cola, and it's not the apocalypse, but the humidity." And yeah, my favorite lines.
I know. They were just brilliant in that. That film was made for them and vice versa. So
hold on to your hinder.
Yeah, I mean, really good, really funny stuff. I can see why it's why it's a lot of people's favorite. It is, and a friend of mine. In fact, the friend was my assistant cameraman on the 2 Clint Eastwood films. Just ordered MST3K version of Warrior, put it on his Netflix list. Because he said, "I've never seen that." I said, "I'm sure it's on Netflix." He called and sent me an email saying, "Oh boy, I'm going to see it next." I said, "Great, have a laugh."
I think it's streaming. I think it's available on streaming too.
It is available on streaming. That's how I watched it yesterday night.
They actually have the straight version of the film on Netflix too, which I'm kind of honored that both versions are playing there.
Well,
the unexpurgated version.
Well, it's a fun. I've personally have a theory about there are certain movies that are, when they're made for entertainment, they have an entertainment value, and I think that's also what drew in the MST guys.
Listen, I could be. Listen, and did you guys see Grindhouse?
I saw one of the films in Grindhouse. I didn't see both of them, unfortunately.
Oh, I saw Grindhouse because I'm a fan of Robert Rodriguez, and I like what Mr. Tarantino does. And I saw a shot at the end of Robert Rodriguez's portion that when all of the vehicles are going to the rescue, I thought that he might have taken it from Warrior of the Lost World. And I thought maybe you caught that film somewhere, sometime, young man. And I would, because I saw almost a clone of the shot from when all my vehicles are heading toward the destruction of Prosser, and at the end when they're all kind of going with the helicopter and all the vehicles, et cetera, et cetera. I thought I spotted a little similarity there.
You're talking about the scene in the same area where the dog dies, right?
Yeah, where they hit the vampires, they or whatever
Yeah.
they blow explode. They all have the blow blood all over the place. And it looked very familiar to me, and I thought, well, I wonder if you caught Warrior over the years.
I never noted. You're right. Now that I think about, because that's the one I saw was Planet Terror. And,
Same.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Listen, I love Robert. I think he's one of the genius young filmmakers of our time, and I teach him in all of my classes every semester. I show the behind the scenes of him making Once Upon a Time in the West and doing Once Upon a Time in Mexico, and his behind the scenes video storyboards for Desperado and the tour of his studio. I point out to people how impressive it was that this young man, when he made it big, and he made it big, didn't buy a lot of cars and a big home in Beverly Hills. He converted his 3-car garage to a mixing stage and stayed in Austin. That's the kind of guy he is. Very level-headed, wants to control his films, and does a great job.
And about the scene being a takeoff of Warrior of the Lost World, I think that is a very distinct possibility, as I know for a fact that Quentin Tarantino, he lists his favorite film as his favorite comedy as Man Knows the Hands of Fate. So I'd like to think that Rodriguez is a Mystery Science Theater fan.
Yeah, no, I think that they do look at, they look at everything, especially Quentin. I know he's seen everything, so I'm sure he's come across my stuff. So,
which segues nicely into the show itself, as we've been discussing. Out of curiosity, how did you come across the episode of Mystery Science Theater where they do Warrior?
Well, even before that, how did you first come across Mystery Science Theater in general?
Yeah.
Well, I was probably channel surfing and came across it and got a laugh, because I could see that these guys, were taking the piss out of somebody. So I knew about it, and then they called me to go back to Minnesota for a big panel discussion at like some kind of an MST3K convention.
The MST3K Convention Con Expo Festorama.
Yes, it was something like that, and so that's when I believe they showed the film there.
I'm fairly sure they did.
That would be true.
I saw it on the big screen, and I was like, convulsing with laughter. I thought it was just amazing.
And I'm honestly surprised that some of the other films you've done, like Kickboxer, Alien Apocalypse, haven't gotten like a riff tracks yet, because I loved Alien Apocalypse.
Alien Apocalypse would be perfect for MST3K.
But then
I was just the director of photography on that film.
Yeah, but the photography was great though.
But I did 3 films back to back in Bulgaria. The first was Alien Apocalypse. The second was the one Bruce Campbell directed that he'd been trying to make for years, Man with the Screaming Brain, also made for MST3K. And the third one I did there was what I like to refer to as Puppet Master 25.
Puppet Master versus Demonic Toys, right?
Yes. Oh, my God. With Corey Haim? Oh, my.
I think it was Feldman.
Corey Feldman, yes.
I was going to say, I believe Feldman for that one.
Oh, my God. And so all 3 of those, that should be a trilogy of Mystery Science Theater 3000's tribute to David Worth only as DP, but they should rip those all a new asshole, because they all deserve it, especially the Puppet Master movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree on that one.
I actually looked on the forums earlier, on the Riff Tracks forums, to see, if anyone suggested Alien Apocalypse, and several people have. They said that the Bruce Campbell commentary pretty much does it. He does it himself.
Oh, good for him. Good for him. I love Bruce. Bruce did the foreword for the book that I wrote, the Citizen Kane Crash Course in Cinematography. I adore Bruce, and I just think he's one of the great talents of our time. And he came out of he just kind of arrived full blown, being the guy in those those horror movies back in the 70s, and gave that great director a big leg up. Right. What's his name? It's slipping my
Sam
mind.
Raimi.
Sam Raimi, yeah. And in fact, when we were on location, Sam sent a print of the most recent Spider-Man over, and we all got to see it. Us in the theater. They closed the theater down, and we went and saw it. Where Bruce had a marvelous. He gave Bruce marvelous cameos in all those films, and so that was a big thrill.
I'm looking forward to Raimi's Wizard of Oz prequel, because I want to see what Campbell's going to be in those.
Yeah, he always finds some place for Bruce. I love that, and Bruce always steals the show. No, Bruce is brilliant. And that series that he's on, I think the roles should be reversed. I think Bruce should be the star of the show, and the other guy should be the sidekick. That's just me.
I tend to agree. The TV movie that they did was the best part of the series.
Yeah, sorry, but that's the other guy just doesn't have what Bruce has. Bruce is the star.
He really is.
You brought up your book. I understand there was going to be a second book from you at some point. Are you still working on that?
I've completed it. I didn't. My publisher didn't want it because they needed they needed 50 more books on writing. They didn't want a book on film history. So I had it published at the University of California, where I was teaching, and used it as a book for one of the courses I was teaching at UCLA last year, called was a summer school course called The Art and Technique of Filmmaking. And I used that book it's called Milestones in Cinema, and it's really a tribute to the 50 filmmakers from the last century that were thinking outside the box and helped to democratize filmmaking, helped to lead to the democratization of filmmaking that's happened now in this century.
Would I be able to purchase a copy of this online or anything?
No, it's nowhere except at the University of California.
All right. I see if I can track one down.
Yeah,
I want to read that.
Yeah, no, it covers everything from Intolerance, D.W. Griffith's film Intolerance, through Avatar. I mean, everyone who was thinking outside the box and who put filmmaking up on a pedestal and actually kicked it into. Some of those guys were kicking filmmaking into the next decade, way back in the 1900s and the 10s and the 20s. They were doing amazing things. If you want to look at an amazing film, you've probably already seen it. Look at Abel Gantz's film Napoleon. Abel Gantz was the Tony Scott of 1927.
That's cool.
I mean, he was doing fast cuts, superimpositions, handheld cameras, swinging cameras on a pendulum, putting a camera on horseback, using 3 cameras side by side to do a primitive form of cinerama, all back in 1927. Amazing guy. So this book is trying to show people that anyone who's interested, that what we're doing today was started by these giant masters of filmmaking back in the last century, and we're really standing on their shoulders when we take out our cell phones every day and start doing movies on them.
One of the stories I always loved was how George Stevens was a friend of Stan Laurel, and how he actually invented a film stock just so Stan Laurel's eyes could be photographed, because his eyes were so blue they didn't photograph.
Yes.
And George Stevens actually invented a film stock.
Wow.
Just so his friend could actually be in productions.
Wow.
You don't hear that.
That's right. No, that's how George Stevens started as a director of photography, mm-hmm. and that's how cinematographers made made themselves useful back in the day by being able to do that. James Wong Howe was able to do that for Mary Miles Minter and made a career for himself because she also had very pale eyes, and he had to put a wall of black felt around the camera so her eyes would show up.
Oh wow! So it would filter the effect.
Yes. So it was so the dark would be seen in her eyes would be photographed darker, and she loved him for it and used him in all of her films, and he wanted to have a big career. And that was how DPs made their careers back in those days, by doing exactly that.
Wow. Yeah, I want to read this book. I definitely want to read this book. So
I do too.
Well, I have only a couple of copies left. They publish it. I'll if you guys send me an address, I'll send you a copy, and maybe you can convince someone to get it published. I would love to get it published.
Well, you could always self-publish it via
I know.
Space or something like that.
Yeah, I know. I have all these different projects on my desk that clutter it, and I'm trying to get to everything bit by bit.
Right.
I'd be glad to do whatever I could to further that along. I mean, I'm with you. I'm a big fan of learning film history, and I feel that that's people keep asking today. One of the things, why are movies not so good? I can't help but feel that might be it a little bit. That there's more of a cannibalization.
Yeah.
This generation is cannibalizing itself more than it's learning its history.
That's right.
They don't realize that even guys like George Lucas, when he made Star Wars, he was doing, well, everybody knows, of course, Hidden Fortress and that.
That's right.
He was also looking at wings for the dog.
That's right. That's right.
They don't realize that, and I think that's one of the reasons that these films might not be coming out so hot.
Yeah, I agree 100%.
Joshua, didn't you have some more questions you wanted to ask?
I did, mostly regarding Warrior.
Sure.
We have to sort of talk about this. Warrior: The Lost World came out in 1983.
Yes.
1982, there was another film in that genre called Mad Max 2.
Yes, right.
Where Warrior: The Lost World has sort of been said as a Mad Max ripoff. What do you say?
No,
to
it's
that?
not a ripoff. It's a definite steal. But it's a very poor man's Mad Max. I mean, I loved Mad Max 2. I loved Road Warrior. I saw the original Mad Max. I saw the original Road Warrior, and of course, I was doing my best with my limited funds and limited facilities in Rome to do a futuristic action adventure in that genre. Absolutely, I was trying to do that.
How long did it take you to make Warrior of the Lost? From the time you pitched it to Sandy Howard to the time that the film was in the can, how long was that?
Well, let me go back and let me I'm not as young as I used to be. Let me see if I can relive these experiences. I was in Rome writing the treatment, I think for 2 or 3 weeks before I read it to Sir Louis. Then he said, make the film. I think we prepped and got all the actors there within the next 3 or 4 weeks. So there was probably 6 to 8 weeks of prep. The film was shot in, I think, 4 weeks. And they were 5.5-day weeks. They would pull the plug every Saturday afternoon at 3 o'clock. Because of that was their rule. So it wasn't, you don't work a full 6-day week. And then we edited on it for a couple of months, and then it was August, and everyone goes to the beach in Rome. In Europe, they shut down everything in August because that's everyone's vacation. And they just shut me down and said, okay, go back to the United States and see your family and see your girlfriend and do this and do that. and then come back in 4 weeks and we'll finish Warrior of the Lost World. And that's what we did. And then we came back and we did the music and the sound effects and all of that. And I spent the better part of a year working on that film. So I wasn't about to try to speed them up.
Right.
I was in Rome. I was seeing the architecture. I was smelling the coffee. I was having the wonderful food. They would pick me up at 8 o'clock in the evening to go to dinner, and we wouldn't finish dinner until midnight. Every night. You think I wanted that to stop?
I was just gonna say, man, it's a built-in vacation.
It was it was the best year of my life. Plus, I met my wife. We fell in love. I didn't meet her. We'd already been corresponding, but we fell in love in Rome. I mean, it was a great year. If someone said to me, you have to make a decision right now to live anywhere else in the world but where you are, before they finish their sentence, I would say Italy. Because I wouldn't care where, as long as it was Italy and they had that food and that culture and and being surrounded by that antiquity and that language. They have the most beautiful language, and they say something and they swear, and their swearing sounds like poetry. It's beautiful. And you ask them, what does that mean? And they tell you, and then you cover your ears. You go, you can't say that. That's the worst thing I've ever heard. But when they say, it sounds like it's wonderful. So I learned the only Italian I learned was how to swear and how to order food. Everything else is a wash with me.
Just as it should be.
So those are the most important things. You need to learn the language.
Yeah. Figlio della mignotone lo mortacci vostri.
Is that ordering food or is that a swear?
That's a swear.
I was
Okay,
gonna say,
let's not translate it.
Yeah, no, pasta con vongole e peperoncino, insalata mista, vino tinto, that's ordering food.
Okay.
and we just lost our Italian market.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah, you can cut that out if you want. I'm just rambling.
Kidding.
I'm
Just
rambling
kidding.
a lot. Yeah. You're welcome to edit this any way that you see fit. I'm happy to chat with you guys anytime.
We'll put a disclaimer in Italian.
Yes.
So.
This is not proper Italian.
Okay. What did you think of the soundtrack? Because that's one of my favorite parts of Warrior of the Lost World is the soundtrack.
Well, I liked the music. I think the big mistake there was letting the sound effects guys were the same sound effects guys who worked for Leone, so I kind of respected them. But I think giving the machine guns that otherworldly sound, I think, was a mistake. When I look at it now, it kind of cringe. But that's me,
I actually agree. I've never liked that in movies when they use what's obviously a real gun and just change the sound.
Yeah, I think that was bullshit. Now that should not have been done. That's I should be held accountable for that and spanked.
Fred, it's your turn.
Sorry, I'm laughing a little bit too.
Yes.
I was just thinking as someone rattles off some words in Italian as he's being spanked. Sorry, it was just I was combining all the stories at one time there in my head.
Listen, it's not the impossible dream.
Well, I guess we will start to wrap this up. I just want to ask. I understand, and this is not a surprise given what you were talking about. You're a professor in film study, but not only do you do this in America, you do this around the world.
Well, yes. This, and again, same story, right place, right time. I came back from doing a horrible trip, which I don't even want to mention, in Romania. They had me staying at some awful hotel in Romania for 3 or 4 weeks, and I hated the experience. And when I came back, my friend, a friend of mine who was a professor, a tenured professor at Chapman University, called, and said, we need somebody to fill in for a semester. Someone's dropped out, and we need someone to teach graduate directing. Can you come and help us out? And I hemmed and hawed because of the money and this and that. And my wife and said, you have to do it, you have to do it, you have to do it. And I said, okay, I'll go do it. And I went. We had just moved to Northern California, and there I was going back, commuting from Orange County to taking JetBlue to Oakland to see my family every few weeks, and living down there, and teaching filmmaking at Chapman University. And well, I fell in love with it. They introduced me to the publisher. I did my book. I was at Chapman for 20 months. Then they started up their facility in Singapore, and I volunteered because I'd been married to a Singaporean for 25 years to go out and help with that. And I went out to Singapore for a year. I sold my car before I left because I was ready. I would stay in Singapore forever. I adore Singapore. And I figured I would, just run that one into the ground. But the curriculum changed at the end of a year, and I was back here teaching at UCLA. I've also taught for a semester at USC. And now I fly every week. They fly me up to teach cinematography at the Academy of Art University in San Francisco. So that has become. I'm into my 6th year now as a assistant professor.
Wow. Well, man,
But
I guess
I do miss being on location and per diem and swearing in Italian while I'm spanked.
Spanked by Donald Pleasance, I'm sure.
By Donald Pleasance with a writing crop.
Well,
yes.
I jeepers, I'm sorry. The imagery.
You're
is
welcome,
just,
listeners.
I can't keep it under control. Because now all I can hear is the computer's voice from Einstein from where it's saying all this stuff, making it even worse. So people will know the book is called The Citizen Kane Crash Course in Cinematography, and it is available at Amazon.com. And
yes,
I highly recommend
Amazon.
people.
Please get one at Amazon.com. I'll be happy if you ever run into me, or you can email me. My email address is in there, davidworthfilm@gmail.com. I am happy to send you an autograph, send you a photo from one of the films as a memento. Please buy the book.
And of course, the DVD of Warrior of the Lost World, the Mystery Science Theater edition, is on volume 16 of the Shout Factory DVD set, and the film itself is on Netflix. I'm sure you can find it in some other retailers. I'm sure it's on Amazon by itself.
The DVD.
A must-have. The MST3K collection, a must-have for anyone who's a serious filmmaker.
Sorry to say that the original DVD is out of print, so you're going to have to look far and wide to find that movie.
Oh, the original DVD's out of print?
No,
Well,
you get it in the compilation that you guys put out last year. Or yours,
not us guys. We're not affiliated with.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah.
We're just fans.
Okay.
But the Mystery Science Theater version is on Netflix.
Yes.
Is on streaming. So go watch that right after this. And I do have one final question. What was it like working with the amazing breakout role that was Megaweapon?
Oh God in heaven. Yeah. Okay. Well, mega fucking weapon.
You okay, Fred?
Yeah,
I know what he's thinking. I know what he's thinking.
I'm sorry, guys. That's all I could come up with, and that's all they could give me for the price and for the budget. Is this big truck from some
Quarry or something?
From some quarry with wooden painted silver spikes in the front that once in a while spat out fire. So yeah, I did my best. But
I thought it was awesome.
Yeah, listen, what I would love to do, and I could, if given the right circumstance, I could do this. I would like to do Megaweapon versus Megalodon.
Ah, gosh.
Get on that, Asylum.
Oh, I was just going to say, don't tell Asylum. They'll do it.
Shark Attack 3 versus Warrior of the Lost World. Megaweapon versus Megalodon.
Hey, talk to the Asylum. They'll probably do Warrior of the Lost World too.
Yeah, War of the Lost World 2 meets Shark Attack 3.
But without the wonderful Mr. Ginty, though, unfortunately.
Yes,
yes.
Unfortunately, it could be a prequel.
May he
Yes,
rest in
it
peace.
would have to be a prequel. We'd have to go the same route as Spartacus Blood and Sand.
Now, what I would do is Megaweapon versus Killdozer.
Yeah, you really can't have Megaweapon without some Killdozer references.
Well, how about
And-
Battle Truck? Have it versus Battle Truck. I think that's the more obvious one. Same.
Gravedigger. Hello.
Excuse my ignorance, but I have not seen those films.
Killdozer is it's the made-for-TV movie where the bulldozer gets possessed by aliens and starts killing people at a rock quarry.
Cool. It could also be versus the 18-wheeler from Duel.
Versus the Puppet Master.
Versus the 18-wheeler from Duel. That was a great ominous thing. That was Steven Spielberg doing his shark movie on land. That was a wonderful film.
Maximum Overdrive 2.
That's it. Versus the Demon Puppets.
versus Demonic Toys and Puppet Master. And throw Pinhead in there too.
Yeah.
I think we've created the greatest sci-fi movie ever.
It's like a pizza, just so many
With everything
toppings.
on it.
Yeah.
And extra cheese.
Yes. Yeah. And lots of
Starring Bruce Campbell.
a cheesy amount of cheese. And we could get Bruce. I don't know. We can't afford Bruce now that he's got the TV series. He might come in and do the narration for us, or the opening narration, or something like that, or a voiceover here and there. Or he just might want to show up and
He could be the first guy killed.
Yeah, there you go.
He gets run over by Megaweapon.
All I know is I want to put Tim Thomerson in it. There you go.
Yes, Tim Thomerson would be great.
Yeah,
I love Tim's work. I should have worked with Tim. There's a bunch of people. I should have worked with Don the Dragon Wilson. I should have worked with Tim. There's a few of them out there that I didn't. I was set to work with Chuck Norris. I was actually in Israel preparing the film that Chuck was going to come and give us 10 days out of his series to do. When it was at Christmas time and my family was there, and all of a sudden I got, we're closing down. Check out of the hotel. Here's your airfare home. Goodbye. Canon Pictures went belly up with me on location.
Oh.
Wow.
Oh man. That's
Preparing the film with Chuck Norris. And I was well into the prep. I mean, it was going. I'm not going to tell you the reason why, because if I mention certain people's names, there might be legalities involved. But
no, that's okay.
But boy, it was pretty amazing.
Well, I know that because I interviewed Albert Pune, and we were talking about on Captain America. They literally, while they were over in Europe, they ran out of money. They didn't even have money to get the actors back home.
Wow.
They pulled all the money, and they didn't even have money to get like Ronnie Cox and Matt Sellinger back.
Was that a form of Canon Pictures?
Yeah, that was
their
end.
Globus and Golem and Globus. Yeah.
Correct.
You met Minhan Golem and Iram Globus.
Yes, I've met both of them, and then I worked with Yoram. I haven't worked with Menachem. I worked with Yoram on the first film I did in Israel, which was called Chain of Command, starring Robert Ginty. Starring Senior Moment. He was the big martial arts star for Canon Pictures. Starts with a D. His last name starts with a D. Dudikoff, Michael Dudikoff.
Oh.
Yeah. So I did Chain of Command with Michael Dudikoff there in Jerusalem at GG Studios, and lived in Tel Aviv and commuted every day. That was a great time. Had a great film. Had a great crew. And I was able to, I had a 36-day schedule. I was able to bring it in about 27 days. And so they signed me up to do Mach 3, which was the script I developed for Chuck Norris. And we were well down the road doing that when things happened.
Unfortunate circumstances.
Unfortunate circumstances happened. and never got done.
Wow.
Completely kind of off topic, but if Bruce Campbell is unavailable for Megaweapon, I say we get Roddy Piper.
Oh, please. I adore Roddy. I worked with Roddy on what was it called? That little the little martial arts film that I did. The second film I did in high def converted me to using high def. I was an immediate convert from film when I first used high def. Roddy is a gem to work with. Absolutely a gem, as all wrestlers are. I love wrestling. I love working with wrestlers because they're our last great theatrically trained actors. They're doing live theater, selling their characters to 20,000 people in full arenas every night of the week. All you got to do is tone them down for the camera. They're great.
Yeah, if you really want to laugh, people should sign up for his Twitter account. I have his Twitter, and he's hysterical.
He's wonderful.
I've been a fan. You know, it's funny. When I was younger, I hated wrestling. Okay, I just couldn't. I wouldn't watch it. And a friend of mine, his uncle, would force us to watch it, and I just was like, oh my gosh, not this again. And then all of a sudden, this music starts playing, and these bagpipes, and this guy comes walking down the aisle.
Roddy Piper.
And immediately, I was like, I said, "Who's this?" And then when he picked up the mic, I never missed whenever Piper was on.
Piper's Pit, you gotta love him.
Yeah, I couldn't care. I could have cared less what was going on, with the rest of it. But I literally followed Piper from that moment on to his film career, and I agree with you. He's such an enigmatic presence that I'm really surprised that he didn't go bigger.
I know, me too. And I loved his film he did, Them. Which as soon as I met him, the first thing I said to him is, I'm here to do two things, kick ass and chew bubble gum, and I'm all out of bubble gum. And he laughed, and then we were instant buddies.
Yeah, They Live and
They Live, it was called, that's right.
And Hell Comes to Frogtown are, I think, just two of his best.
Yeah.
For fun, have a good time.
No, Roddy's great. And I've worked with Hulk Hogan, and when I worked with Hulk Hogan, there was a guy tagging along with him named Paul White. And just tagging along to be there to help him, bring him coffee, and a huge big guy, Paul White. And then when I'd be on my back shooting an upshot with the camera, holding the 35 camera, he'd reach down and lift me up with one finger. You know who he became?
Who did he become?
The Big Show.
Oh, you're kidding.
Yeah.
What was his name?
The Big Show.
Paul White.
Oh, I actually knew him. My granddad was helping him. He was running for city councilman here in town. He's from my hometown.
He's a cool dude, man. Very sweet guy. Very sweet guy. And I was so happy to see him explode because he was just dying to do something. He was kind of with Hulk, following him around and just being there. I think he had a part in the film too. But I mean, he was just. It was before it all happened for him, and I was so happy to see it happen for him because he's a huge talent. And the same. Look at all those guys who act. Cena, Big Show, and when they do acting, they're great because if you can do that, you can do anything.
It's very true.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they don't probably complain as much considering they'll cut their heads open almost every night in their shows.
That's right. No, that's a paid vacation for them. And I tell you, the guy who's really, really talented is the guy they call Big Sexy.
I don't follow wrestling, so
yeah. I was going to say you lost me in there. I'm sorry.
Yeah, yeah. He's like 6'7", and he's I'm trying to think of his name right now, but he played. Did you see the remake of the Longest Yard with Adam Sandler?
Yes, I did.
Yeah, the football film. I loved that film, and all the wrestlers were in that film. And he was the guy who they gave the hormones to, and his breast started to tickle and all that. He's just a hilarious guy. These guys they all have great senses of humor, and because they know what they're doing is they're basically it's a license to print money. It's hard on their bodies, of course, but they have a great lifestyle.
Oh, it's Kevin Nash.
Kevin
Yeah,
Nash.
Kevin
Nash is a great
I've
fucking
met
actor.
him. Yeah,
He's a
he's actually
great-
very talented.
Very,
Yeah.
very talented actor. I mean, he can do anything. He can play comedy. He can play tragedy. He can be the bad guy. He can be the meanest guy in the world and turn around and mince out of the room. I mean, he's just amazing. And so many of those guys are because they, as I say, in my opinion, they are the last real theatrical actors going.
Well, they're kind of our closest thing we have to like what Hong Kong has, you know, with their very elaborate background in theater.
That's
for
right.
film. You know, they learn
That's right.
they learn
That's
a
right.
little bit of everything. They learn martial
That's right.
arts, they learn
That's
dance,
right.
they learn
That's right.
a little of everything. And if you think about it, that's what they do in wrestling. I mean,
That's right.
Really very much the
it's
same
not-
thing.
Absolutely right, and it's a hard sport. It's a hard life. I just saw a documentary on television last night on one of Kevin Nash's compatriots back in the day, who played the character Razor Ramon, who's now just on his last legs. I mean, has had heart attacks and is on all kinds of medications, and broke my heart.
Yeah, I remember him from the WCW days.
Yeah, that's right.
Scott something.
Scott Hall.
Scott Hall, yeah. He'd go
Scotty,
up. He was the one that went, "Hey, yo." Right?
Yo, that's
Yeah.
right. And throw a toothpick at you. Hey, yo.
That's it. That's him. Yeah.
That's right. No, well, those guys, yeah, they're a breed unto themselves. But his story now, Scott Hall, is basically exactly that film, The Wrestler, that they did a few years ago. I mean, he's living that life, only worse.
Well, like him and Jake the Snake
That's
Roberts. What happened
That's
with
right.
him? And
Yeah, well, Mr. Hall, Scott Hall, had a very bad problem with drugs and alcohol, and WWE went into six figures sending him to rehabilitations, and just he couldn't keep it, couldn't hold it together. But that's life in the fast lane.
Well,
Any other movies you want to talk about? I'm happy to rap with you guys all night.
Let me just skim your IMDb page.
well, I do have one right off the bat. I see that you worked on one of my personal favorite guilty pleasures as a second unit, actually. It was Remo Williams, The Adventure Begins.
Remo Williams, The Adventure Begins, all shot. I did the second unit in Mexico. Yeah, was down there for and we actually stayed in the hotel that John Huston shot at for Under the Volcano. Yeah.
Now, would that be all the sequences, like when he's on the supposed military range? Then, would that
Yes,
be the
that's all the
sequences?
sequences with the big mountain in the background.
Okay, and the
I think-
logs.
I think it's the same volcano that you see at the end of Man on Fire when Denzel Washington's dying, looking out of the car at that volcano. I think that was our location for Remo Williams.
Okay.
And it was, and no, that was a fun deal to do. I did the truck chase, I did the big log ride, and helped out first, did multiple cameras on first unit for some of the interiors, did the Doberman chase, and both of those films, Remo Williams, The Adventure Begins, and Inner Space, were done with the absolutely superb second unit director, Glenn Randall Jr., who had been on Star Wars and Raiders, and this was I was honored to be in that kind of working on that kind of a level with those kind of professionals. Those were fun shows to do.
Okay. Did he do the entire movie?
Yes.
Okay.
But he was the second unit director.
Okay. Because I was going to say, there, oddly enough, in the movie, there is sort of a kind of a tonal shift in the film once that part of the film begins, and I was just curious if they had somehow split the crew or something.
No.
Okay.
No, it's just because when you move from New York to Mexico, that tonal shift happens automatically, I think.
Oh, okay.
And by the way, we found a restaurant with the greatest margaritas I've ever had in my life, most lethal margaritas I've ever had in my life, right across from the hotel. I'm now clean and sober 11 years, but back in that day, I had your portion, my portion, and Aunt Emma's portion. So
Let me guess, they called it the Destroyer. Okay, right.
I don't know what they called it, but they made it on the rocks. It wasn't frozen, and it was lethal.
That was a Remo Williams joke. I'm sorry.
Oh, I see. Okay, I'm sorry. You're
the
right.
The novels were called The Destroyer. I'm sorry. It was a bad joke.
No, I didn't read the novel, so you went right over my head. But I love the fact that Joel Grey, I think he was nominated for the Academy Award for that show. He was unrecognizable. He was amazing to watch his performance on that show. Absolutely.
I agree. He embodies Chun in just about every. Actually, both him and Fred Ward step out of the book. I mean, they literally step. I mean, the rest of the movie really doesn't play like the books.
I have no idea how they fucked it up, but they somehow fucked it up. It didn't perform, and they didn't do a sequel. I figured that was going to be 2 or 3 films.
Yeah, it could have been an entire series. They were aiming for a James Bond franchise.
Yeah, they should have, and I think possibly they took too long getting it rolling. You know what I mean? I think you're obligated in the first one to do all the character background and all that, but they might have kind of beat that to death in that particular version. But
yeah, and the villain just wasn't very strong. I don't feel.
That's right. I agree. I can't even remember who it was.
Yeah, it was just sort of flat, and like you just said, it doesn't. Well, the entire sequence we were just talking about in New Mexico, that doesn't happen until literally the last quarter of the film.
That's right.
It's like while Chun and Remo's relationship is the heart of the novels and the film, and that's where they succeed, in my opinion.
Yes, I agree.
Not having a strong villain, that's what I personally think really did it in.
Yeah.
One of the elements that did it in.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, those second units. I love filmmaking. I would do any job that came across my desk. First unit, second unit, DP, director, editor, post production, doesn't matter to me. I love the process, and those were very nice films to do.
Oh, that's nice to hear. It's good to hear some positives for a change.
Yes, I can accentuate the positive.
And eliminate the negative.
And latch onto the affirmative.
Gentlemen, is there any other questions from Mr. Worth, who has been more than generous with his time?
I actually do have one. Are you familiar with a reviewer named Obscurus Lupa?
No.
She reviews B to Z grade movies, mostly action films, and she's actually reviewed 3 of your films. And it's sort of like a mini MST3K kind of format where she summarizes the film and makes jokes.
Oh, good. Well, what's her? Does she have a website or a?
She can be found at thatguywiththeglasses.com, and I can send you the link.
Okay, yes, fine. Yeah, send me the link. That would be great. I'd love to check in.
She's done Lady Dragon 1 and 2 and Shark Attack 3.
Oh, well, she's got the cream of the crop there.
Oh, and Alien Apocalypse.
Oh, okay. Well, I don't take responsibility for that. The other 3 I directed.
Let them get their own swearing Italians with a whip.
That's it.
Honestly, I thought she was kind of mean to Alien Apocalypse. I'm like, I like that movie.
Yeah. Well, that was done by Josh Becker. Josh is a sweetheart. He's like a little old curmudgeon who likes to sit by the monitor and roll his cigarettes. But he did he and Bruce go way back. In fact, they go so far back, they both worked on that original Sam Raimi horror film.
Evil Dead.
They all did that together. They all were friends together.
I'm right here in Michigan, just so you know, and that group was called the Detroit Movie Mafia. Those guys, Bruce Campbell, Josh Becker, Sam Raimi, Scott Spiegel. Those were the Detroit Movie Mafia. And,
well, they did it, man. They really, they all busted out, and then they met up in New Zealand doing the Xena series.
Mm-hmm.
And
Rob Tappert. I'm sorry, I forgot Rob Tappert.
Rob Tappert, that's right. Who did my favorite new series? Have you guys tell me that you've seen Spartacus: Blood and Sand?
I have, but I don't have that channel, so I only get to watch it when I go over to my mom's house.
Yeah, I watched it all on DVD because I don't have the channel either, but I rented the DVDs. This I found that really a groundbreaking series. I mean, it's basically softcore porn where you see full frontal male and female nudity. You get to see Xena's breasts every week, and the money shot is blood.
Your offer intrigues me.
Hi, kids.
Yeah, hi, kids. You can cut that out if you. I'm just saying.
We don't have kids listening to.
Okay,
No, that's
fine.
just a joke I do every time.
I just found it really. I love the series. I can't wait to see the next version because it's really an adult show. And they spray blood in just all directions in slow motion. And see, I used to go to the Japanese movies in the 1970s, the Sword of Vengeance, Sword of
Doom,
with Tomishiburo Wakayama with the baby cart and the little guy.
Lone Wolf and Cub.
The Lone Wolf. And they would literally cut people's arms, legs off. Blood would shoot 30 feet in the air in slow motion. I used to go to a theater in Los Angeles called the Toho La Brea. These movies were rated X for violence. Back in the 70s. Loved them.
Was and I could be wrong on this, sir, maybe, and you probably would know this. Wasn't Sanjiro the first to actually kind of do that over the top, like just excessive blood? Was it the first? The sequel to Yojimbo, Sanjiro?
You're probably right. I think that Kurosawa was the first guy.
Because he's the one that did Sanjiro.
Yeah, and I think he was the first guy in one of the killing scenes near the end to use slow motion.
Yeah, that's the one.
The one where he is cut and dies in slow motion. I think he was the first to do that.
Yeah, it's a fountain of blood too. It's just it's a ludicrous amount.
But I love that. I love that stuff. I mean, I'm a sucker for it. That's just my taste. I love it. That's why I liked Robert Rodriguez's part of Grindhouse because he was spewing blood in all directions at a certain point.
I need to watch more Robert Rodriguez films.
Oh yeah, listen, Robert's brilliant. If you haven't seen El Mariachi,
I love El Mariachi.
Oh yeah.
I mean, this is a film. This is a genius piece of filmmaking. This guy made a film for $7,000, and he said all of that went to 16 millimeter film and processing and printing and telecineing. If he didn't have to do that, he could have made the film for $600. But he sat in a medical experiment for a month, and while he was there, he made a Rodriguez, what's been now called a Rodriguez list. He made a list of everything he knew he could get for free. The bus, the jail, the street, the this, the that, the camera. And he wrote his story around that. And then he went and made his little movie. It was done so cheaply. He knew that he didn't want to shoot sync sound because if he shot sync sound, he'd waste too much film by roll camera, roll sound, speed, market, 220, take one, would waste too much film. So he just shot it MOS and would tell the actors to say the line like he said it. Right after they did the picture take, they'd do a little sound take into a hand recorder, and then he edited it all together on a tape-to-tape machine. You know, back in the day when he put it together. Brilliant filmmaker.
Yeah, he used every trick under the book.
Every trick in the book.
Short ends.
Yes, every trick in the book, and got himself a hold on a rung of the ladder with that little film, and has kept it. And has moved up, you know. Great job. Brilliant.
Yeah, I heard. Whoops, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, he was saying in an interview that it actually cost astronomically amount more to release the movie in America when they redid it.
Of course.
And it was like something like $300,000, I think.
They
redid the sound and redid everything.
Of course. They redid all the sound and all that. They redubbed it and remixed it, etc.
What a contrast.
Yeah, but he, you know, that's guerrilla filmmaking. It's a guy with a vision. He knows what he wants. He's got it figured out so precisely that he won't even shoot sound because he knows he'll be wasting too much film rolling the camera and sinking the sound in the picture. This, to me, is a sign of real brilliance.
Yep. If no one's seen the DVD, you should, and the commentary is amazing on it.
Oh, yeah, and then to me, he reached kind of a pinnacle with Sin City. I thought Sin City was absolutely astounding work.
Well, I do love the Marv storyline. I know that. Marv's my favorite segment.
Well, it's just because you got all these stars in there, but they're augmented with CGI. It's all done against a green screen, and there's plenty of squish factor. And I just thought it was a brilliantly done piece. I can watch that when it's on. I can watch it over and over again. It's a jaw dropper for me that the technology is to that point that you can take Mickey Rourke and make him look like that, and make it work. But you guys could always have it. MST3K could always do a version,
Yeah, the RevTrax guys could. I think they did they may have done one in Sin City. Honestly, don't know. They may have. They haven't.
I would remember that. No, they haven't done Sin City.
Yeah.
I haven't seen it on the list.
I'd like to see that. Someone needs to recommend they do that. Or either of the Grindhouse movies, I think would be good because they're basically high budget B movies, which
that's right. That's right.
That's the name of the game.
Oh, you know what I loved that I discovered was a B movie on the second viewing. I saw it when I was in Singapore. I loved it so much I went back and saw it the next day, and then I was a little more distanced from it. I said, "Oh my God, this is just a B movie." But you know what made it a A movie was the cast. It was Taken with Liam Neeson.
Yeah.
That putting Liam Neeson in that film made it an A movie because of the emotion and just what his persona brings to a part. I mean, amazing, because it's nothing but a B revenge movie, but brilliantly done. I'm a big fan of Luc Besson, The Professional. Come on, get out of here! Absolutely the best.
His French productions, even the stuff he produces, some of them are some of the best action movies out there. If no one's seen D13,
yes,
you've got to see D13.
Yeah, and the first one with Jason Statham.
The first. Oh, you're talking about the Transporter.
Transporter is fucking great.
Oh, okay. I was talking about D13, but yeah, okay.
I saw that too. I see anything that's got his name on it.
I got confused, not you. I got lost. Yes. He's an amazing producer, and he's produced. I wish they'd release more of his stuff over here in America. There's a series called The Taxi Films, which we unfortunately got a sort of remake with Queen Latifah, which I do not recommend.
No.
But you got to see the Sami Nassiri originals. Probably, I think most people would probably enjoy Taxi 2 more. But believe me, you don't need any backstory. You can just go into Taxi 2 and enjoy it.
I know. It's just a shame that the American public is so ignorant that they can't read subtitles. I've already seen all three of The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, by the way, on Netflix. Loved them. I've watched them twice, and I've watched the TV series that they did out of them by putting some of the outtakes, put some of the material that was removed for the features back in. There's 2 hours of extra material. It's an 8-hour series for the 3 films. Absolutely fantastic. I'm a big fan of the original, and of course you can't say anything to knock Mr. Fincher's work. I mean, he's impeccable. But I don't think that given all the money and star power that they had, that they made that much difference in what The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo was all about.
Well, I'll never forget as long as I live. I went to see, and mind you, we're not talking Sin Caliber here. I'm talking about subtitles, just for the record. We went and saw Rumble in the Bronx, Jackie Chan's Rumble in the Bronx in the theater in America here. And it had been dubbed into English. But the first 5 minutes of the film was still in Cantonese. And as we sat there and watched it, and maybe in 5 minutes is too long. Maybe it was about 3 actually. And they start off in Cantonese. Then the uncle goes, "Oh, let's speak English," and the rest is in English. Well, before this happens, we're talking 3 minutes of Cantonese, and this guy behind me yells out, okay, in a PG-13 movie, by the way, in a theater, "What the F is this?" And I'm just like, wow, you can't take 3 minutes.
That's right.
Of reading subtitles. You couldn't.
That's why they're remaking The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, because people won't read the subtitles.
Well, all of them. Let me in and
yeah.
Or let the right one in. I'm sorry.
That's all. That was very well done. I liked that remake, by the way.
Have you? Yeah. Did you watch it?
Yeah, it's the same director who did Cloverfield, and I really liked it. I thought he did a great job.
But it is a shame. I was just agreeing. Yeah. It is a shame. We'd see a lot more Tell No One, which I understand is being remade for over here.
Yeah, if America didn't have remakes, they wouldn't have a film industry, basically.
Yeah.
I mean, unfortunately, that's Seven Samurai, The Magnificent Seven, Yojimbo, The Good and Bad and Ugly. I mean, Fistful of Dollars.
Let's be fair; those were Italian.
Yeah, let's be fair; those were Italian. Those were remade by an artist, so that's okay.
Yeah, and they're exceptional. It's funny too because I prefer for a few dollars more and Good and the Bad and the Ugly more than A Fistful of Dollars, which is the direct remake.
Yes.
And it seemed to have spawned off.
Yes, and I also love Once Upon a Time in the West. I mean, it's it's really long, but my God.
That's an amazing movie.
That's an amazing movie. The opening with Jack Elam and the train and the
fly.
And the fly. Jesus H. Christ. Unbelievable. There goes the Pentecostal crowd. Great film. And when you first come around and see those eyes on Henry Fonda and he's the killer, good Lord, that's a great film. Yeah, Mr. Leone. That was one of the great thrills of working in Rome. Actually, I walked past Mr. Leone a few times. I'd be going in to check something on Warrior in the sound booth, in the sound studio, and he'd be walking out. And I actually met the great Federico Fellini at lunch one day. Someone introduced me, and my editor introduced me, and that's what I refer to as pasta con vongole con Fellini.
I will pretend to understand what that means.
It means pasta with clams, which is what I was eating for lunch, but then also with Mr. Fellini.
Fellini.
All the Italian listeners are like, see, I got it.
Yeah, there you go.
If they weren't turned off by the swearing earlier.
Yeah. Well, they might. Mine was very mild compared to what they say. They say unbelievable things. They live right in the shadow of the Vatican, and they say things that I can't repeat. It's just it's amazing. But they say it, and it sounds like poetry when they say it.
Take your word for it.
Any final questions?
I've hit my limit actually, for now.
All right, we're.
I got something.
Oh, go.
In a time of conflict and rebellion, astride his supersonic speed cycle rides one man, a fearless survivor who has gone on to direct Warrior of the Lost World. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. David Worth.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, guys. I appreciate it.
Sir, it was a real pleasure talking with you.
Anytime, not a problem. I'm happy to do it.
Yeah, if we can get you back on the show at some point in the future, I'd love to just chat with you again, even if it's not about Mystery Science Theater.
No, you can chat with me, guys. You all should have my email address and my phone number. You're welcome to contact me at any time about anything you would like to contact me about. And send me that email or send me the website where I can go and check out The Girl with the reviews of Shark 3, etc.
All right. Well, I believe that is it for the MSTieCast tonight. Josh, Fred, any final thoughts?
Anything else about Warriors or any stone we left unturned?
Did we leave any? I think we got everything.
Okay.
I think we left one unturned, but Michael Blade went and blew it up. So
No, I got more than I ever expected, and this was wonderful for me. I am a student of film. I love talking about film, and that alone was just worth the price of admission for me, sir.
Wonderful. My pleasure.
all right, so I guess that's it for the MSTieCast. I'm Tubby Mobius. Thank you for joining us, Mr. Worth, and well, play us off, Neil.
It stinks.